Hello there, and welcome back to the Love Machine podcast. Now, are you caught in a cycle of doubt and worry about your relationships, even when there's no real evidence of any sort of problem? Well, you're not alone. In fact, research suggests that over 7% of people experience relationship OCD, a form of obsessive compulsive disorder that focuses on relationship fears and anxieties. So, in this episode of the Love Machine podcast, we're diving deep into this topic with the incredible Laura Miller. And Laura is a licensed clinical therapist, group facilitator, entrepreneur, and aerial arts enthusiast. She specializes in helping anxious minds transform fear and self-doubt into courageous, values-driven action. Through her unique blend of skills and passions, Laura connects deeply with her clients, empowering them to embrace their strengths and live boldly. So, if you've ever struggled with intrusive thoughts about your relationship or just dating, or felt paralyzed by what ifs, this episode will help you understand what's happening, why it is happening, and how you can break free. So please tune in for an inspiring and uplifting conversation that will leave you with tools to conquer your fears and live with confidence in your love life. Laura, how are you doing?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much. And thank you for that lovely intro.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really pleased to have you here. We had a quick chat before about doing this. I thought this is a great topic. It's so relevant to dating. Even people that haven't necessarily got OCD or anxiety often have to relate to people who have. So first things first, can you tell me a bit more about yourself and how you got into this? And I'd also like to know about the aerial arts side of things. What does that involve? Is that up in the sky? What happens?
Yeah, I will address that first. Aerial arts. No, it's not drawing pictures of helicopters. I've actually had that.
I didn't mean that.
That would be a very niche hobby. No, aerial arts is, if you think like Cirque du Soleil. So aerial silks, the lyra, the trapeze, tramp wall. I have always been very drawn to the art of dance in the air. So much so that it is actually quite inspired my business, my private therapy practice. It's a little bit of a theme interwoven there. So that
interwoven. I see what you did there. Okay, right.
Yes. That is certainly how I spend, a lot of my free time hanging upside down. Very good for the circulation and the brain. Other than that, I've always been very passionate about mental health and particularly anxiety and anxiety disorders because they can have such a profound impact on a person's experience and enjoyment and fulfillment in life. So for me, pursuing becoming a therapist and specializing in anxiety disorders, even given some of my personal history with anxiety and OCD, it just seemed like such a great fit. And it's one of those things, I think one of my favorite things about being a therapist are those daily opportunities to practice what I preach. And I've certainly had some experience with that in the relationship department as well. So I was so excited when you reached out to me because relationship OCD, affectionately called ROCD, is something that just can really get in the way of enjoyment, fulfillment in dating and relationships, and can really keep people stuck in a cycle. And so I'm very excited to be here today and to that you reached out.
Amazing. Well, I'm really pleased to have you here and to talk about this topic. ROCD, that's what you call it.
ROCD.
Great name for that. What
Yeah.
are the symptoms of this then? What do you think someone that's going through this, what are they experiencing? Is it panic? Is it anxiety? Is it fear of meeting somebody? What are the different symptoms?
All of the above.
Yeah.
So just like with any type of obsessive compulsive disorder, there are a couple components that we are looking at. So one is an intrusive, unwanted thought. So that thought might sound like, what if I'm with the right partner? It might sound like, what if I make a mistake and pick the wrong person? What if I don't love my partner enough? What if they don't love me enough? So it starts with this thought. Now, as human beings, we have thousands of thoughts per day, and most of our thoughts kind of come into our awareness and we're able to just move them out pretty quickly. We don't think twice about them.
Mhm.
But with the OCD cycle, some of those thoughts get sticky. I equate it sometimes to like sifting sand in a sand sifter. I'm at a nice beach, I'm sifting my sand. It's all kind of passing through, just like all these thoughts pass through. But then every once in a while, I get like a big shell or maybe a pop can tab or a cigarette butt. And no matter how much I try to shift that, it's not going through.
Yeah.
So then what happens is I have an emotional reaction. And I think, if this thought isn't going anywhere, it must mean because it's important. It must mean because there might be some truth to it, or it is true. Now I'm experiencing anxiety, and now I'm trying to do something to figure that out. So that usually shows up as overthinking. And so I would be just curious, even from your experience, what are some of the what ifs that you hear from people that you coach and work with? Like, what are the what ifs that they're the concerns that they're bringing up?
Great question there. This is something that comes up an awful lot, very recently as well. I'll give you some examples and some what ifs. People that maybe started dating someone and it's been a few days, a few weeks, a few months, and they haven't heard back. They text them and it's been 2 hours, or maybe it's been 10 hours and isn't a normal pattern. And the what if they've gone off me? What if they have met someone else? What if they've been hit by a car? What if I don't hear from them again? What if they are playing games with me? What if they are time wasters? What if they are just messing me around? There are so many thoughts that go into this. Or, but the biggest fear, of course, is rejection. That's what comes into this. It is the fear that if I don't do something, then I'm going to be left on my own. I'm going to be really hurt. So I think the biggest what if is, what if I get rejected? Would you agree with
Yes.
that? Is that common?
Yes, I agree. I think that fear of rejection is really powerful and can really kick off the cycle. So, a trigger is really what sets the cycle in motion.
Yeah.
So, a trigger in this case, I've texted this guy and it's been 2 hours and he hasn't gotten back to me. And he usually gets back to me within like 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Or I haven't heard from this person. We had this great date. We had so much fun. And now I haven't heard from them at all in 2 days.
Hmm.
So, that is the trigger. And then the trigger sets off the anxiety spiral or the OCD thought process. And now all of a sudden, that core fear of being rejected, which is a core fear that many of us, if not all of us, have, right? That's painful. That OCD thought process or the anxiety thought process wants to protect us against that. Ultimately, sometimes I talk about OCD as a bit of a jerk, but ultimately what it's trying to do is protect us. It's trying to protect us from feeling those difficult feelings like rejection or regret, right? And so we then start to try to figure things out. We try to start to do things. And for folks with OCD, those things typically occur in our minds, in our imaginations. Whereas with our traditional obsessive compulsive disorder, maybe we see people like hand washing or arranging items, light switches on and off. For OCD, it's all happening up here. Another thing that is very, very common is reassurance seeking. So, people, loved ones, or friends of people that have OCD will say things like, "You're driving me nuts, asking me every 5 minutes about this relationship." They've often received like feedback that like, "You're driving me a little bit crazy here with all these, questions." So yes, absolutely. That fear of rejection, that sort of triggering, is this a rejection, really kicks off the cycle. And anytime we've got that, that core fear kind of poked at and activated, that's going to kick off, the overthinking. As with any type of OCD, the more we overthink, the more what ifs we can then introduce. Because OCD will always say, but yeah, you think you kind of figured that out, but what if? There's always another what if. The reassurance, the checking, that can feel temporarily, can give us a little bit of temporary relief. But ultimately, that process of overthinking, the process of checking, the process of comparing, that fuels the cycle.
Yeah.
And so, really, and I did not come up with this, but one of my mentors, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I ever learned with OCD is that, and with anxiety in general, is that you cannot think your way out of OCD. You cannot think your way out of OCD. You have to behave your way out. And so that's something I think certainly, that we will probably start to talk about here very shortly.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned reassurance there. That is
Mhm.
why these clients are coming to me. And they'll say, James, I know I've got OCD. I know I've got the anxiety. What can I do to manage it? And they'll ask my opinion. And I will reason with them. I explain to them why they're probably overthinking, overreacting.
Mhm.
However, having said that, and I have to be realistic, it's my job. I have my, this is what people come to me. Sometimes their gut instinct is right, isn't it? That person has not texted them for 6 hours because that person has lost interest.
Mhm.
However, they don't know at that point. It's too early
Mhm.
to tell. So you need to give someone the chance. And I do say this: if you've not heard from someone 6 months, or 6 months, 6 minutes, or 6 hours, whatever it might be that triggers you, then that's okay once. If it happens on a regular basis, then maybe that person is losing interest. They aren't the right person for you. Anyone that is regularly triggering your OCD and making you feel bad probably isn't the right person for you anyway. Or if it is, have a discussion with them and tell them what you're doing, and maybe they can work with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a really, it's kind of a bit of a distinction, I think, sometimes even between anxiety and OCD.
Yeah.
Whereas with anxiety, a lot of times the talking, sort of talking through things and reframing of the negative thoughts and challenging them is usually really effective.
Mm.
And then for those folks that are solidly in that, that category of OCD, the more they try to talk about it, the more uncertain they become.
Yeah.
And so the reason, one of the reasons OCD is so tricky is because, absolutely to your point, there is a root of this triggering experience in reality. Maybe they've had the experience of rejection and it has felt
Yeah.
really painful. Maybe they are, most people with OCD are very highly attuned to others. And so they do pick up on a lot of subtleties that maybe other people may not be so keen on.
Hmm.
And so, yes, it can feel so alarming because there's a negative truth in all of these thoughts. So yes, I love what you're saying in that we can kind of cognitively work through these things. We can also assess, like, if someone is really kind of toying with you, playing with your emotions, being manipulative, that's a real sign of a relationship issue. That's something that is based in a communication breakdown.
Hmm.
And that is an issue that is rooted in reality versus someone who's got all these what ifs going on, but yet doesn't really have a whole lot of evidence. Let's say that their partner is really communicative. They're sharing their feelings. They're texting back, on regular basis. They're going out on regular dates. They're having a lot of fun. And we don't have a lot of evidence to anything of the contrary. But yet all of these doubts continue to circulate. So those are a little bit two different things. But again, the impact is really real.
Yeah. That's where self sabotage comes into it. Because, like you said, people are
Mm.
thinking of reasons, they're looking for the red flags rather than the green flags as they go forwards. So, what is the way out of this? If you're having OCD, is it a quick thing so a quick solution, or is it a lot of work you have to put into this?
I think it is work. It is work. And I think that there are small steps that anyone can start to take. And the first thing that you can do is to lean into the uncertainty. So when you notice the thoughts coming up, the what ifs, instead of trying to figure it out, say to yourself, yeah, that's a possibility. That would suck if it's true.
Hmm.
I'm just going to have to see where the day goes, or I'm going to have to
Yeah.
see where the week or where the relationship goes. So I'm not trying to fight the thought. I'm not trying to push it out. I'm just acknowledging it. I'm acknowledging the uncertainty, which does not feel good because we want to figure that out. But the more I figure it out, the more I try to figure it out, the worse I'm going to feel. So leaning into the uncertainty of it, I'm generally going to have a pretty intense spike of emotion. Ooh, I don't like this. I don't want to acknowledge this as a possibility.
Yeah.
But when I'm able to sit with that and practice continuously sitting with that, it becomes less triggering. And so then I may still have the thoughts, but I don't feel like I have to react to them all the time. Maybe they don't feel as intense.
Mhm.
I know when folks are in their head, everyone, when we're in our head, we're not in the present moment, right?
No, not at all. No. No.
Yeah, no.
No.
Yeah, we're not in the present moment. And so we have to start kind of telling ourselves, yeah, I'm acknowledging I'm feeling a little uncertain about this, but I'm going to do what I was going to do anyway, because that's that behavior piece. I'm going to go on this date anyway. I'm going to put myself out there anyway. I'm going to enjoy this moment anyway. And so the more we're able to connect with what's actually happening in the moment versus crossing over the bridge to imagination land in our mind, the more we're actually going to experience positive emotion. And maybe we still have those setbacks, but they don't feel as completely life shattering.
Great advice there. What about people that think too much about this and they start to fantasize? Because I see that quite a lot as well. They will fantasize and they will create relationships in their head or even problems that don't exist. But I think in this sense, I'm talking about people that think this is the person. I finally met the one. This is it. This is the be all and end all. This absolutely must work out. And they'll overthink that. So it can never quite match the reality. Do you see that sometimes too?
Oh yes, absolutely. The extent of the creativity of the human mind, and I want to bring some self compassion to that piece of it as well, because when we really want something, it is natural to to sort of to want to like feel those emotions that we would feel if that were the reality. And sometimes we end up making really poor decisions as a result of not being connected to what's really happening. Um, and so, yes, I think, there's certainly a lot of utility and benefit to kind of like utilizing those cognitive approaches. What's going on in the present moment? Checking in with your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you, I'm blanking on all my other senses in the moment. What do I taste? What do I touch? Checking in with like the reality. And I think that is something, particularly folks that sort of experience that kind of limerence, that can be really challenging to do because oftentimes you're right, the reality doesn't feel like it lives up to the expectation.
Nice.
And sort of looking at the expectations. What are my expectations? Do I expect that I'm going to have these very intense feelings of love and desire just continuously throughout the course of a relationship? That may be a little unrealistic. What does love look like? What do long-term relationships generally look like? How do they shift and change over time? And then learning to have some acceptance around those natural changes.
Yeah. I do think that if you're in that situation, then talking to your partner or talking to friends or therapists is the best way forward because then you can verbalize this and get it out of your head. That's what I
Yeah.
think. If someone will come to me and say, look, I'm thinking about this, and I think taking things slowly also helps because a lot of people rush into relationships so quickly. And I imagine someone that has got OCD would rush into things. They would want to make it work for the fear of losing it.
Yes, definitely. There does, as with any type of OCD, there's often, with OCD, you can have an intrusive thought, but you can also have an urge, and it can also be an image. So that urge, that sort of urge to like make things happen, that feeling of urgency absolutely can drive and influence, sort of that process of things moving too quickly. So it's almost like, and this is what I think can be so helpful about seeing a therapist, is that the therapist is able to help you slow down the runaway train.
Mhm.
And as you said, very taking things very gradually, kind of reducing things down into just small, bite-sized, actionable steps that you can take to slow down the train. Because the first step, we can't go from like runaway train to all of a sudden reversing course. That takes time. So first thing we have to do is slow down the train, and then we can slowly start moving it in the opposite direction and build more positive momentum in a more healthy way.
Mhm. And I would add to that, I always tell my clients in the early stages of anything to have other options going at the same time. Because if you've
Mm-hmm.
got multiple people that you could be seeing, getting to know, you're not going to fixate on one person. You've always got a backup initially. And they call this roster dating now. And I know this because I've done a lot of press on it recently, funnily enough. It's a common theme where some people agree with this, some people don't. But they say that in the early stages, it's always good to have maybe two or three people that you're sort of seeing. So you can really compare them and see what you want and what you don't want and get to know them. And if one of them's not interested, one of them slows down, you've always got somebody else, which stops you getting upset and stops you fixating. The other
Mhm.
school of thought is it's better to focus on one person at a time and give it your best shot and your best energy on that person so you're focused. So what do you think is better? I have my own opinions on
My
this.
gosh. I personally, and this is my human self speaking, not necessarily my therapist self. But I would say, having those options open,
Yeah.
because and maybe dating or starting to date kind of multiple people, because you're right. You're kind of spreading out that energy a little bit. You're experiencing different things with different people. And ultimately, yes, I think that the more experience you have, the more better you're able to say, this is something I want versus I don't think this is something that is going to work for me.
Yeah.
And also, you're right, it does soften that rejection factor when you also have a robust life outside of just this one person. So I think, I say from my own personal standpoint, that's probably the route that I would go. And for most of my clients, I would probably also suggest that. There may be some people that might be the exception to that, but I always think that, we have as humans, we have a really powerful negativity bias, and we have to actively cultivate positive emotions. And in order to do that, we got to get out and meet people, and we have to experience life.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. In my own personal case, I was had a bit of a roster dating going on. I was doing lots of dating, but then I did meet my wife and we started talking, and then I stopped the others because I knew that she was the one. But I wasn't going to know that until I actually put the other options. If I'd have fixated on her right from the start, it might not have worked out. I'd have been stressed out. I didn't hear. Well, I did hear from her quite a lot. It was fine. But generally, if you want to get a job, you go for a lot of job interviews till you get a job. You don't stop. But there is also the paradox of choice in dating, that if you've got more options than you can possibly handle, you're never going to make a decision. So I think a balance is always good, and maybe just having 2 or 3 options at any one time. And if
Yeah,
things do start to progress, then slow things down and focus on the 1 or 2 people. That's the way
yeah,
around it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
What
I
about?
think, you had mentioned earlier, sort of the fear of rejection. I think another big core fear that I see in folks who are dating is this fear of making a wrong choice,
Yes.
or regret or missing out on
FOMO.
another better opportunity.
Mm.
And so responding to that with some uncertainty, like I'm feeling uncertain about this and I'm going to go on this date anyway. Or, yeah, there may or may not be someone else better out there for me, but I'm going to go on a date with this person because I actually enjoy spending time with them. And I want to do that today,
Yeah.
and continuously challenging, leaning into that uncertainty and making those values driven choices.
You know the card game 21 Pontoon? Do you know that? Where you have to deal
Oh
with
my God.
21. You know that
Maybe?
game? Yeah. The idea is you keep dealing the cards and get as close as you can to 21 against the dealer. So
Yeah.
you deal what, maybe a card, another card, adds up. If it goes over 21, you bust and you lose the money. If you get 21 itself, you might win. If you get under, you may still do well. My advice is similar for dating. You've got to
Mhm.
deal quite a few cards to get what you want, but at some point you've got to make a decision. You're going to stick. Otherwise, you're going to bust. So you're going to
Mhm.
find somebody who makes you happy. No one's perfect, but stick with that one person when you get to that stage. Keep dealing some cards, get to where you want to be. If you hit 21, wonderful, you can't do better than that. But if you go over, you're going to bust. Keep giving it
Yeah.
a go, because
Yeah.
that's how I see dating in the same way. You've got
Yeah.
to make it fun. You've got to have fun. I think people that have OCD, it stops being fun overall.
It does. And actually, not only does it stop being fun, but it becomes incredibly stressful and anxiety producing.
Yes, it would do, because it becomes a
Yeah.
chore and it
Yeah.
becomes something that doesn't make you happy and blocks you.
Yep. And it doesn't go away even if you end up, sort of committing to a partner. It can continue. The cycle can continue, whether the relationship is new or it's a very long-term established relationship.
Yeah.
So that cycle, that thought process, is something that can be very, very disruptive.
Yeah, it is. And I see that a lot. People will come to me with different relationships, and the same clients come back to me time and time again. They haven't learnt their lessons, but I always work with them. So how would you suggest somebody that is maybe dating someone with this going on? How can you make them? How can you calm them down? What can you do? What's the right phrase for that? How can you help them? Maybe.
So if I'm dating someone that I suspect has OCD,
Yes. Yeah. How can you knowing what
I'm
the
gonna
boundaries
go
are?
get my own therapist. No, I think, I think showing empathy and compassion can go a long way.
Mm,
I think there is a tendency to want to get defensive, right? If you can't commit and say that I'm the right one, then this is going nowhere. I'm out of here. And that protects the ego, right?
mhm.
But I think if we notice that this is an ongoing pattern, that like this is someone that we have a great relationship, we've been growing our relationship, we're growing closer, but yet these doubts seem to linger, and this is a pattern. Really showing some empathy around that. Like I understand this is hard for you. Um, it must be really difficult sitting with these doubts, because oftentimes when the doubts feel seen and heard, it's going to like take it down a couple notches. Not only that, it's going to preserve the relationship, keep the lines of communication open, and again, potentially you might have a little bit of influence into whether or not this person might benefit from seeking some professional support.
Yes. And I think if you tell your partner what's going on, what you're thinking, they don't know otherwise. They might think, well, I purposely not been texting you back immediately. I didn't want to seem too keen. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
explain that to you. Or you'd rather have a phone call sometimes. You're getting upset. I'm happy to have a phone call with you. See how they work. Are they flexible on this? Are they willing to work with you? If they just laugh at you or say you're being ridiculous, again, maybe it's not the right person.
Yeah,
But
I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, it's all a balance, isn't it? And I say that a lot with on podcasts. Everything's a balance. You've got to work out what the person's going to gain from this and what they're going to lose. And communication is the secret to all of this overall.
Mm-hmm.
Which one more thing as well I want to mention. There's a lot of people that have these situations and it stops them getting into any sort of dating or relationship in the first place. They are too scared to even go on a dating app or to go on a date. Do you have any advice for those sort of people? Because I'm sure there's someone listening out there now that might be in that case.
Yeah. I would absolutely break it down into the smallest baby step.
Yeah.
So maybe the first step is not creating a dating profile. Maybe the first step is um, watching a movie about someone dating. Or maybe the first step is researching different dating profiles, or different dating apps, I should say, or different dating options. Maybe the first step is even just thinking about creating a dating profile. In exposure work, exposure and response prevention therapy, which is the gold standard for treating OCD and ROCD, that would be considered an exposure hierarchy. So we take the smallest little rung on the ladder and we introduce a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of anxiety, and we start to teach the person that they can handle it, that they can handle uncertainty, that they will not fall apart, and that nothing bad happened. And then we work our way up the ladder. So I would say for someone who is really struggling and even entering the dating scene, take it like so many steps back. Maybe the first step is talking to a friend who's dating,
Mhm.
um, exposing yourself to dating, even indirectly, in the most smallest way possible.
Yeah. So doing one thing at a time, not advancing too fast that it scares you,
Yes.
but still
Yeah.
taking some form of action at the same time.
Yes. Those baby steps.
Yeah. I think inaction is a major problem for people, and it's inertia. It's the fear that if I do something, I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get rejected, and I think I'm going to wait until a better time. I'm going to wait until Christmas is over. I'm going to wait until the new year. Wait until I've lost 2 stone, and it stops
Yes.
them. It's an excuse, and it happens over and over again. And that in itself is a form of OCD, I believe, isn't it? Because that is them thinking, well, I'm always delaying stuff because I'm never going to get it.
Yes. Avoidance. I actually
Yeah.
haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah.
Avoidance is a huge compulsive behavior.
Okay.
I'm just going to
Good.
avoid. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yes. So yes. So that sort of analysis paralysis. And this is what I tell folks that come in, my clients that are so worried about, wait a second, you're going to be making me do things that terrify me. Why would I want to do that? And what I tell them is, it's not going to feel any worse than how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, that's very true. It's like anything. If you want to get fit, I'm scared to go to the gym. Everyone's going to laugh at me. I'm not sure what I'm doing. But you feel awful anyway. If you go to the gym, you might start to feel good. You think be proud of
Mhm.
yourself. And when you start to make small achievements in anything, and we'll talk about dating because that's what the topic is about today, then you'll think, this is great. I've done well. I've bought myself a new outfit as a treat. I feel good. I've had a haircut. I've gone up to booked a dating event. I found nice pictures, and it's building upon that and building upon your confidence. But again, taking it all slowly, like you said, one step up the ladder at a time. And I tell people that all the time when I start working with them about the ladder. I say, well, coaching with me is like a ladder. You at the very bottom of this ladder, at the very top, is your goal of a happy relationship. And everywhere up, there's different rungs. Sometimes you're going to slip down that ladder. But my job as a coach is to keep pushing you up there, making you keep going forward all the time. But sometimes you are going to fall, and it's my job to catch you. So I do understand that it's perfect, and I help people with that all the time. But we are coming towards the end of the episode now already, which is crazy. Where's the time gone? That's just insane. So half an hour has whizzed by so quickly. So I want to ask you a question. We have so much more to talk about, but it's quite late here. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody. And it is this question. Do you have any daily habits or routines? Positive ones, not OCD ones.
Yes. So, number one, and this is anxiety and OCD unrelated, stay
Yes.
hydrated. Stay hydrated. Even just a 2% reduction in hydration in your body starts to affect every single physiological process. So, if you have anything that is important in your life, you want to stay hydrated. Make sure that your brain and your physiology is going to be there supporting you. So, that's like the basic, easiest number one thing.
Yes.
Um, I have another couple of strategies that I often utilize, even just having an anxious mind myself.
Hmm.
One is I write out all of my worries or ruminations either at the end of the day or at the beginning of the next day. That way I have them out, they are on paper. I will give myself, a certain amount of time to indulge in any of those worries. I will let my mind get really creative. I will go to the worst case scenario and I will really think about all these things, but I will do it for a limited amount of time. And then the rest of the day, I say to myself, yep, I'm going to lean into some uncertainty and just have to see where the day goes with this. And I refuse to engage with any of those thoughts that I know are not productive.
Hmm.
I have one other strategy. I hope that you find it helpful. It's called STAY. And so that stands for, it's a mindfulness strategy. It
Hmm.
stands for use your five senses. So the stands for see, which is basically a reminder to use your five senses. What are you seeing, hearing, tasting, touching in the present moment?
Hmm.
The T stands for today. So again, in the present moment. A
What,
stands for, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
you got out of order, that's all. You said the A, if it's stay, surely
Oh
it's
my goodness.
STAY. That's,
I bought my best strategy. So is C, T is today. So C today, except is the A, and then the Y is yet to come.
oh, okay.
So see today, except yet to come. What am I seeing in the present moment? What is my reality based on my five senses, here and now? And then acknowledging that I can't have 100% control over anything. And so I'm going to accept what is yet to come.
Hmm.
And so even that acronym in itself, STAY, I think is a nice reminder just to hang out in the present moment as much as possible.
I love that. I think that's all you can do is hang out in the present moment, because the past doesn't define you. Your future hasn't been there. You're working on what you're doing now. As long as you're happy in the moment and being appreciative of what's going on around you. And I work on that myself quite a lot, being appreciative of that, because I find sometimes my mind wanders. I worry about stuff, not great anxiety, but it's normal, isn't it? Some degree of worry. It means I'm planning.
Absolutely.
It is, but I think sometimes I'm not present, and I make sure that I try and be as much as possible. And all those things you just said are great, and are using all your senses. So today, random example, I once a week I go and sit by a pond with my brother. He comes up to visit me. We have a little chat in a business meeting, and I have a coffee. So I make sure that I will taste that coffee and how amazing that is. I will smell the air. I will feel the cold. I will look at the ducks. I hear the water, and I'll be present, because that doesn't last very long. It's one of the highlights of my week to go and do that. but being present just for that couple of hours really makes me and helps me for the rest of the week. And that's great advice. I absolutely love that there. Thank you, Laura. So wonderful.
And I was there with you when you were describing that. I'm like, oh, as a fellow coffee lover, I'm like, that sounds wonderful.
It is, but sometimes you think, I'm having the coffee, I might have another one after this, so you don't really appreciate it, but you enjoy what you got.
Right.
This, by the way, the second coffee is never as nice as the first one either, is it?
That is true. And I've actually never heard anyone else verbalize that, so I feel validated. Thank you.
Good. Well, my dad, when he was alive, God bless him, he used to like cups of tea. Very British thing to do. And he always said that the second cup never tasted the same. So what he used to have was have a giant mug. He had a really big mug about that size, and he would drink out of that. So it was always the first cup. And I love that. But I couldn't drink that much coffee in one go. I don't think I'd be hyper and buzzing all day long.
Yes.
But maybe in some ways we should be. I think we should be buzzing all day long when it comes to dating and love, because love is the best thing you can have. And I think life is too short to worry about stuff. And if you need some help, go and get someone as amazing as you to do this. So somebody did want some help with these particular topics. See what I'm doing here? You're laughing now. How would they find you, Laura?
We can certainly find me on my website. So it is www.unboundcounselingservicespllc.com. All of my contact information is on there. Even if you're not seeking a therapist, but maybe you heard this and something resonated with you, I would love for you to just hit that contact button and let me know. Let me know what it was. I would love to spark, conversations around this. You can also find me on Instagram at Unbound Therapy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really, really appreciate this. I do want to keep talking, but we've gone over the time now, but there we are. I hope we'll talk again another time. But it's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. I so much appreciate this opportunity. You're wonderful. You get your honorary therapist badge for the day.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.